Hi guys, welcome to office hours for week 10 for COIS FRSC 2750, Computer Crime and Forensics. Thank you for taking some time to spend with me and do this live, and thank you to the people that are watching this afterwards. I hope to add value and certainly to very clearly go over my expectations. I see the people that are joining me live are some of the names that I recognize from being here all the way through the course. I think there's a lot of value in completely understanding the expectations and being here to ask questions. But of course, we don't have a scheduled class time, so I rely on people to make their own choice and attend if they can, or watch. Certainly, the office hours, if this is your first time watching it, watching a recording of it, are mandatory. You should probably spend some time and go back and watch some of the previous office hours, just because there's going to be things that I'm not going to cover here that don't overlap. Particularly if you find yourself in a position where you're still not seeing the quizzes, you might want to figure out why that is. I'm always happy to answer any questions. If there happens to be someone live that has never been to an office hours, never watched an office hours, you want to ask me any question, I'm happy to go over anything as many times as needed live. So we find ourselves in week 10, and bear with me while I pull up the syllabus. So we are on chapter 7 in the text, RAM, Memory Forensic Analysis. There is a chapter 7 quiz that is due Friday at 11:59:00, and there is discussion 4, post 1, due at the same time, 11:59:00. So it's not the end of the world if you're late on that first discussion post. It will be a flat 10% penalty, and it's best 4 of 5 discussions for your final mark. So if you find yourself overwhelmed this week and next week, if you think these are times to take a pass on the discussion, you can do so without hurting your mark. That's obviously a personal decision. We will have discussion 5 in week 12 and 13, which may even be a tougher time that you may want the time back. It takes a little bit of time to do the discussion and do it well. So as far as the discussions go, we are marking discussions 3 right now. Those marks should be released by Sunday evening, maybe Monday morning at the very latest. They will not be as verbose as discussions 1 and 2. And what I mean by that is we went out of our way to give very descriptive feedback to people for the first 2 discussions. And based on the many years that I've been doing this since 2014, I've done a lot of feedback on discussions, and I've found over that time, if someone didn't pay attention to the feedback that they got in discussions 1 and 2, they were not going to change, and we're just wasting an awful lot of time being very, very detailed in the descriptions of the problems. So my advice to anyone that is looking for more feedback than just the mark, just the rubric, is to go ahead and look at the first couple of discussions for very detailed feedback. Okay. There's a rubric you can look at, and that shows your mark, and it should give you a very good idea of where you came up short, in addition to previous feedback where we were very explicit about what our requirements were that you weren't meeting, if you had that situation. The people that are paying attention are typically discussions 3, 4, and 5 are getting very, very close to perfect on these discussions. So don't feel bad if you're not. Maybe you don't write that well or whatever, but you should be able to have improved from your initial efforts in discussions 1 and discussions 2 at this point. So we will certainly release those late Sunday or Monday. Just depends when my workshop leaders get done marking all of the discussions. I like to release them all at the same time. Okay. The next thing to sort of look ahead to is next week, week 11, on Friday, which would be the 24th, I believe, March 24th. I'm just going to check that because I hate giving misinformation. Yes, Friday, March 24th at 11:59:00, the term paper is due. So that is a big deal in terms of your mark. So you should be hopefully already having done some writing on that, at least done some research on it. The people that get the best marks in that are the ones that they're the ones that do multiple drafts. So you do a draft, you read it over, maybe wait a day or two, read it over, and then you revise. I tend to write more words than what is required, and then I cut it down to the size that I want it by distilling out all the stuff that doesn't add value. So other people build up. What you don't want to do is write 800 words and try and throw 700 words of fluff or 400 words of fluff, because it's 1,200 to 1,500 words is what I'm looking for. Throw a bunch of fluff at myself and the other markers, because we will absolutely see right through that and your content mark will suck. Having said that, I just want to go over the requirements for the term paper. I'm going to do it very briefly. There is I think it's about a 12-minute video in the term papers that goes over in great detail what I'm looking for. So I would recommend watching that if you haven't already. But really what I'm looking for is 1,200 to 1,500 words in a formal essay format. So what I mean by that is paragraphs, an introductory paragraph, several paragraphs in a body and a conclusion, as well as I've required that you have a title page, and you would also have a reference list for that. So you're going to have at least 10 in-text citations and 10 or more references. So if you're not aware, you can have 10 references and have 30 citations because you're citing things multiple times, the same source. That's super common. But you need 10 sources, 10 references in your reference list, which should be alphabetical, by the way, and at least 10 in-text citations. So do cite in the body or you'll lose a bunch of marks. You should have got a lot of practice working the discussions. This is not a whole lot different than a discussion, except that it's more in depth. So all the same principles that apply to the discussions also apply to the term paper. So instead of 3 references and in-text citations, we're at 10 for this. It's much longer. Okay. APA format, you should be well used to that at this point. When I say APA format, though, I like to be very clear to people. What I mean for APA format is that the in-text citations and the reference list has to be in APA format. I don't care if your title page is in APA format, because there is a prescribed format. I don't care if you've got the running header and all that kind of stuff that goes with very formal APA papers. What I care about is your reference list and your citations, okay? Make sure you submit your paper in Word format. We will not accept any other form. I will do my best if I identify that someone has submitted something other than Word to let you know. I don't make any promises, and I will definitely deduct marks if you submit in, let's say, PDF format, and I see that after the due date, and I get back to you, you are going to lose marks for it, for sure. Okay. And we will only accept the same thing in Word format. You don't get to submit in the wrong format and continue to revise and work on your paper and submit a different content in Word. But please watch the instructions. I do want it in Word format specifically. Late submissions are accepted for this assignment. They are 10% per day or part thereof. That part thereof starts 1 second after 11:59:00 on the Friday, the 24th. Okay, so anything that's later than 7 days will not be accepted. There are some people that have SAS accommodations, and sometimes that accommodation includes late submissions. Please do the courtesy of sending me an email and letting me know that that you are using your SAS accommodation to be 3 days late or whatever. Don't make me guess. Yeah, please communicate that. That is certainly your responsibility. Use a formal tone, avoid first person, so not I, we, those sorts of things. This should be a scholastic style paper. So you're going to research, you're going to present your findings in a scholastic tone. And like I've already said, revise, revise, revise. The paper's worth 15% of your final mark. So keep that in mind, please. It's certainly worth spending some time on, and it will be necessary to do well to get a truly good mark in the course. Okay. Any questions? I'll just take a breath here for a second. Any questions about the term paper or anything I've covered so far? All right. Is it likely we will have our discussion 4 marks back before post 1 of discussion 5 is due? No, almost undoubtedly not, unfortunately. And that's just a function of all the things that are going to be being marked. It gets more and more congested towards the end. What I will say is that you will definitely have it back before you have to do discussion 5 post 2. So there could be, I mean, you should have a good idea of where you're at you'll have 3 of the 4 marks at that point. If we can, we will. Don't get me wrong. I don't delay just to delay, but the realistic situation is that there's a lot of stuff to mark as you get further into the term. So I try not to pressure. I pressured my workshop leaders to turn the marks around in about 5 days for discussions 1 and 2, so that you guys could see the feedback before you had to post in the next discussion, even the first post. And I relent once we get past those first 2. So unfortunately, no, I can't promise that you'll have your discussion 4 marks before post 1 of discussion 5 is due. Good question, though. And did I answer that fully? Is there anything else that I need to cover? Okay, you're welcome. When you mean 10 in-text citations, does that mean when we are paraphrasing / changing the initial quote and adding the author's credentials? So there's really good resources that I posted on APA format and what the requirements are. There's also a really good video in what is it, course content general, I believe, about revising. When you paraphrase something, someone else's thought, someone else's idea, and you put in your own words, you are required to cite that. That is intellectual property. So that's the basis of how every university and every academic institution operates. If it's not your original idea, you have to give credit to whoever it is that had that original idea. Okay, so you have 2 ways of incorporating their idea. One is to paraphrase and put in your own words, interpret it and completely, put in your own words. The second way is to quote it. So you can put it in quotes and you can take their exact words, and then you again have to cite it. You have to cite it in both cases. So you're going to put the author's name and the year that it was published, and that's going to be in your reference list. Okay. I discourage, and most people that do the sort of job that I do discourage you from using quotes. You want to be very careful using quotes in a 12 or 1500 word essay. Perhaps a quote, you could get away with 1, maybe 2 quotes. You don't want them to be too long. If you start, for instance, using 200 words of quotes in your 1200 words, it's pretty hard to give you credit for content. That's one. The second one is if you use too many quotes, it becomes very clumsy to read. It's just a bunch of quotes. It's not, there's not enough original content there or thought process demonstrated there. So by default, if you don't have any quotes, you're better off than having too many quotes. So be really careful about using direct quotes. But yes, if you paraphrase a thought that someone else's, you have to cite that. Now, that's a good. First of all, Shan, did that answer your question fully? Are you good with my answer? Waiting for Shan, but I'll presume it did for now, and I'll branch off into another comment. I've had therefore one paraphrase counts for one citation. Yes. So if you I mean, you can actually have a sentence that's paraphrased, whatever that idea is, and you could have two citations after that. Because it could come from two sources. You're just showing me or showing the reader where that idea came from. So if you wanted to dig in deeper, if you're publishing a full thesis or a full academic paper, this is just practice for that, right? This is a very small practice for that sort of endeavor. The reader could go and see more about that idea. They could dig down, they could do more research. You're using some of the other author's idea. Here's where you got it from. It could come from two different papers. That's very possible. But if you put two citations, that's fine. You just include those two different books, articles, YouTube videos, whatever the source is in your reference list. The better the source that you have, the better the quality of your paper in general. I recognize that there's not necessarily going to be peer-reviewed academic papers covering all the subject matter, or there's almost certainly not 10 of them covering these subjects that I've asked you about. But having said that, use the best sources that you possibly can, okay? The more credible the sources, the more credible your paper is as a result. Okay. I have another question. I'm going to come to that. I'm just acknowledging that I see another question, but I want to take a quick segue here. I'm unfortunately for this class stuck doing academic integrity investigations, meaning that people cheated or potentially cheated. So I note that people are using paraphrasing software. So there's nothing wrong with using paraphrasing software by itself. But if you take someone else's idea, word for word, paste it into paraphrasing software, and submit that as your own work, it is not, okay? Just to be 100% clear, you need to paraphrase it. And if you want to take that paraphrasing software or Grammarly or something like that to clean up how well you've expressed yourself, that's another thing. Using paraphrasing software based on the original content of someone else's paper to try and disguise the fact that you're using their paper word for word and you're using an automated software is going to be an academic integrity violation. Okay, so please be aware of that. I mean, that should be obvious. It should be obvious that you've done absolutely nothing if you've copied something from a paper, pushed into some software and copied the output and dumped it in. The same is running ChatGPT. So if you're going to put questions into ChatGPT and then copy them and paste them as your own work, if I find out, if I'm able to prove that, you will be subject to academic integrity review, okay? I said in the very first office hours, as I say it every year, that I inevitably do these investigations. People inevitably get marks or marks against their record right up until expulsion from school. That's the highest level of penalty for academic integrity violations. Please don't do it. Just don't do it. It saves me a whole bunch of time, saves you a whole bunch of anguish. It's a frustrating part of the job. In classes this size, I inevitably do it, but I try and warn people not to. So if there's any questions about that, if that's not 100% clear, fire away. But I'm going to go on to the other question that I've got here. Not to relate to the comment we're talking about right now, but I submitted discussion 4, post 1 yesterday, and a couple of minutes after submitting it, I realized I did 2 of the citations wrong. Can I edit it? Yes, of course you can. All you have to do is just resubmit it. So you're good. Just get it in so that you don't have a late penalty. Get it in before Friday at 11:59:00, please. There's no problem with discussions. They stayed open right until the last second. We're smart enough that, especially if you put a edited version or something like that, we will always mark the latest version of the post that we see. So, okay. All righty. Yep. Yeah, it happens all the time, right? Sometimes it's a formatting. Sometimes you go, oh crap, I meant to change that or whatever. We won't even look at the first submission that you did on your discussion. We'll look at the second one if you say this is an edited version or even, I mean, we just figure it out. The way when we look at it to mark discussions, it's all your discussions in a row. So if there's more than 2, we start figuring out what's going on. And like I said, I don't even read the first version. So if you made some, egregious error in there, don't worry about it. We won't even read it. Okay. Another topic that I wanted to cover was the fact that hopefully you've designated by now, it was due last Thursday, I think, at 4 p.m., if I'm not mistaken. You have designated where you're going to write your exam. That's an important thing to do. Hopefully you have done it. If you do not designate your location, and you have 3 choices, Durham, Peterborough, those are in person, and online with Examity, then you will by default be writing in Peterborough. So you are given a couple of weeks to do that. And if you find yourself, you live somewhere where you're not going to be in Peterborough, you're not able to get to Peterborough even, you are going to want to reach out to online@trentu.ca, and I would start with an apology because you had 2 weeks to do it. You did not do what you were asked to do, and ask them to help you out. Okay. I can't help you out. There's nothing I can do. And quite frankly, there's nothing I would do, barring sickness, 2 weeks of illness or something like that, where you just couldn't respond. My expectation is that the people in the class do what they're asked to do. There's just way too many people in the class for me to chase or beg or help or whatever. So the expectation is when you get an email and it's to schedule your exam location, that you hop on that and do that. I see that some people are doing the sort of test enablement of Examity. It's a little, I don't even know what it is, to be quite honest. It's just a test to make sure you connect to Examity properly, I believe. I see that some of those are coming through because I see them in my grade center. So that's excellent. I would strongly suggest that you make sure you understand how Examity works if this is your first time using it, or if it's been a while since you used it, so that you don't have the additional pressure when it comes to the exam. There is no need to put yourself under additional pressure going, oh, how did this work again? Practice it. Make sure you're comfortable with the process of Examity. So if you chose to write online, it becomes a multiple step process. You've designated online, but you also have to make an appointment through Examity, and that means signing up for Examity. There's a registration process and picking that time to write your exam. You will be scheduled. Make sure you show up at the right time. Make sure that there's no time zone issues or whatever. Every year, someone misses their Examity exam. That's like missing your exam in person. Okay, if you've made an appointment, you got to be there for that appointment, barring a provable medical event or something like that. Okay, I've said before, and I'm not going to belabor it, make sure that you have the equipment that's required for Examity. You need a working computer, a good internet connection, probably a backup internet connection I would have, and a camera and a microphone. Okay, so those are requirements to write with Examity. If you don't have, for instance, a microphone that works, you can't write that way, period. It's that easy. You will not be allowed to proceed with the exam. So make sure you've got the equipment you need to proceed with Examity if that's the way you're writing. I submitted my location to do my exam in the Durham campus. My Trent doesn't mention which location I'm in. So I talked about this last week, and I'm happy to go over it again. In my Trent, that is a static announcement, meaning it does not differentiate. It's really just telling you when the exam is, okay? So it's always going to say whether you chose Durham, whether you chose online, like through Examity, or whether you chose Peterborough. It's always going to say the same thing. It's going to say Thursday, April 20th, 2023 at 7 p.m. Location, gym, duration 3 hours. So that's the default Peterborough location. It's not a dynamic message. Okay, it's dynamic in that it picks your courses and tells you where the exam would be if you were writing in Peterborough. So do not worry about that. If you've designated Durham, then you will be fine. You will be in Durham, presuming you did that correctly. I always take a couple of extra exams. I'm not able to absorb, like I'm the one that proctors in Durham typically. I'll have extra exams, a couple extra exams in Peterborough, a couple extra exams in Durham. I can't absorb a whole bunch of people that decide at the last minute they want to write in Durham for whatever reason instead of Peterborough. So wherever you've designated, that's where you're expected to be. And if I ran out of papers, it would be the people that had designated properly that would get the papers. Okay. So again, that's never happened. Generally, there's a few people that just don't show up for the exam period, right? There's people that are in the course that are designated, particularly in Peterborough, because that's the default. They're just never going to show up. They haven't shown up once online. They haven't done anything. They're not showing up anywhere. But I would be providing papers for the number of people, the overall number of people. Okay. So don't worry about what the My Trent says. And if you, for instance, in Examity, you've got sort of a 24-hour span starting at that 7 p.m. on Thursday, April 20th. So say you chose 9 p.m. that night. That's what that was the slot you wanted to write. That's fine, but it's not going to update on My Trent. It's not going to change the time there either. Okay. You have the email confirmation that you're going to be doing your exam on site in Durham. Yep, that's fair. That's a great question. No one needs more anxiety at exam time than they already have, right? So if you've got the email confirmation, you'll be fine. As we get closer here, another week or two, I'll get a list from I think it's Trent Online. It's from IT in any case. And they'll tell me how many people are expected and who those people are for Peterborough, for Examity, and for Durham. It'll also tell me who's writing with the SAS group as well. So it gives me an idea. It allows me to plan and distribute the exams as appropriate. Okay, so no worries at all. I think that's about all that I wanted to cover. Yeah, just encouraging you guys to make sure. I know you got lots of things going on. There's lots of competing pressure papers due and tests and quizzes and everything else. But do spend some time working on that term paper. It's not the biggest term paper, but if you want a really good mark in it, you need to have a couple of drafts done so that you polish this thing and make it as good as you can. Okay. I have another question. I chose Peterborough on-site option to write my exam, but I see an option for Examity on my Blackboard. Is that normal? I'm not sure where you're seeing that. If you've chosen Peterborough on-site or chosen nothing, then you're on-site for Peterborough. I don't know. I'm sorry. I don't have the same view as you guys do. I don't know if that's normal or not. Perhaps the other members of the class could comment if they can still see an examinee option. If you're, sorry, let me rephrase. If you're saying the examinee option in Blackboard within the course on the menu side, that's my link. And yes, that is absolutely normal. Not to worry about that. And I think that's probably what you're talking about now that I think about it for a second. It's the one that is below midterm exam, and then it says examinee, final exam, and examinee, right? Those are live links. Those are for the people that go ahead and write with examinee, but everyone can see that. I don't have any way of screening that for people only that are choosing to write by examinee. So no worries about that. I got an email confirmation from Durham as well as my first choice. Then I got an email to log into Examinee. Got a confirmation to do my exam and Examinee as well. I'm confused since this is telling me to choose the time for my exam on Examinee. I would strongly suggest reaching out to online@trentu.ca. If you chose Durham as where you're writing, they should be able to confirm that for you. I don't have access to that information yet. But the fact that you're getting an email to log into Examinee means that someone thinks you've chosen Examinee. Okay. You shouldn't be getting an email for Examinee unless you chose Examinee. Okay. So do follow up and do it sooner rather than later, just because they get super busy, like really, really busy as we get into exams, right? Yeah. Okay. All right. Thank you. Yeah, just by the fact that you guys are attending office hours and thinking about these sorts of things, you'll be fine. Just do it sooner rather than later. If you've got confusion, do reach out to online@trentu.ca. They will be able to help you. Yeah, they should be able to help you for sure. You're welcome to copy me on those email if you want, just so I can follow and I can add in if I've got input. I'm happy to be CC'd on those email. Okay. Does anyone else have any other questions? And in answer to the student that asked if I had time to meet privately after the class, yes, I do. Absolutely. I've got time set aside for you. And that applies to anyone that has private questions. The student that I've got scheduled, I'll get to you last because we'll be having a longer discussion. But if anyone here attending live wants to talk to me privately in person, stick around at the end here, and I'll put everyone into separate breakout rooms. Okay. If you don't have any more questions, get on with your evening. Thank you very much for continuing to show up for the office hours. It's very helpful. Good questions today. Hopefully they'll help more than just the people that ask them. So I definitely appreciate that. So get on with your evenings or stick around. I'll wait a few minutes and see who's left, and I'll put you into breakout rooms as needed. Thanks, guys.